All right, welcome into today's show. I'm joined by Brant Champoux out of Southeast Iowa. That's right, Midwest, where I'm from originally, coming to us from Oskaloosa, Iowa, which is in the southeast part of the state. He is the pitmaster and team captain for Secondhand Smoke Iowa. So make sure you check them out on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok at Secondhand Smoke Iowa. Brant, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Kurt. Appreciate you having me.
So one of the things that I always like to mention anytime I start a show is give some context to our listeners about how I got connected to all these cool people in barbecue, because lately we've been talking to folks across the country and across the globe. So it's been kind of fun. And, you know, for our listeners, I think it's an important thing to note here. And that is Brant sent me an email and said, "Hey, love the show, love barbecue, would love to be on the show." And I said, "Well, come on." So I think that's important because a lot of people don't want to ask that question for whatever reason. They don't, and gotta give you some props, some kudos there, Brant, for reaching out because at the end of the day, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So
that's exactly right.
All right. So enough of that. Let's talk about journey. How did this all start? How did you get into this crazy world that we know as competitive barbecue?
Well, before the competitive side, started with Sunday Fundays at the house. Always had the friends over, bought a house young at life at 19, threw parties every Sunday, grilled for everybody. The wife one Christmas bought me a little cheap electric smoker, said, try it out. So we did that. The next year we bought a camper, started camping down the river with family. Memorial Day weekend, took that whole week off, do some flathead fishing right before the spawn. Found an old brisket I had in the freezer from a beef we got and cooked it up, and didn't know anything, didn't have a clue what I was doing. Cooked it up, wrapped it up, threw it on the counter. Everybody came down, friends, they're like, "Where's that brisket at?" I said, you don't want that yet. And then my uncle came down and he asked me, so I was like, "All right, you can try it." Told me it was the best brisket he ever ate. So I'm like, well, all right, I did something right. A few weeks later, we were back down the river catching fish, and he goes, "Cook me some ribs." I'm like, all right, threw those on. We actually took some flathead belly meat steaks, threw them on the smoker. Delicious. So that got started on that. So I played around at home a little bit. And then a couple years later, my insurance agent started hosting a barbecue comp here in town. The first year he asked me to do it, I couldn't. I had a golf tournament I was helping run. So the second year he came back around. He goes, "Hey, I have a team. They backed out. Everything's ready. I just need you to come cook." So we went and did it. No calls. That was 2019. No calls, but the public, we served the public with that also. Everybody raved about my chicken. The wife made smoked mac and cheese. She only made 1 or 2 pans, which is a bad thing because everybody wanted more. We had competitors and competitors' wives coming down like, "Hey, I want to try your chicken and your mac and cheese." Well, it's gone. So we had a blast that first year. So let's do it again the next year. So we did that again, 2020, no calls, but still had a lot of fun doing it. 2021 came, same comp. We ended up getting a first place brisket, and we won the People's Choice Award that year. So how they did the People's Choice was it was based on tips because it was a fundraiser for our first responders. We had 28 teams that raised $4,000. My team alone raised $1,000 of that with the first place brisket, and then the People's Choice. We're like, well, let's try another one. A couple months later, there was another one half hour down the road. Went to that. Got a first place pork butt and won the mystery meat on that little sidewinder comp they had, which was a lamb chop. Never cooked one in my life. Took second place on it. So then we decided to hit one more comp at the end of the year. It was just a little town. Decided to throw a competition. It was all pork, and we took third in that. So 2022 hit. That winter, it's like, well, I want to get serious about it, see what we can do with this. I was sitting in my daughter's bedroom. She was a year and a half at that point. She was trying to go to sleep. It's like, well, if I need to do this, I'm going to need equipment. I'm going to need some people behind me if I really want to make a run at this. Started emailing people. One of the first ones was Inkbird, and see if they'd be interested in doing some sort of a sponsorship or something, and kind of told him my story. And he came back with me that next day. He's like, you know what? I love your story. We're trying to get out there more. Let's do it. So started working with them. They got me connected with a lot of good temperature products. Picked up a few local sponsors here around town. And then, in 2022, we did 9 comps. Ended up 7 of those were sanctioned through the Iowa Barbecue Society. 2 of them were not. Out of those 9 comps, we got 17 calls and 10 first place calls. So,
wow.
Yeah, we even got the chance to do a KCBS Pro Series comp. A friend of mine, T-Rex Barbecue, he just won wings at Murfreesboro and was on his way back. And I just finished up a comp up in Stewart, Iowa. He called me. He goes, hey, I saw you just got a 176 on brisket. I said, yeah. He goes, well, I got an opportunity if you want it to do a pro comp, KCBS Master Series. I'm like, okay, well, what's that going to cost? I'm kind of a low budget team here. He goes, well, actually, Darren Worth had an entry into it, and his name got pulled for the jack. So he contacted me and said, find a deserving backyard team that can go cook this comp. So I was supposed to be in a wedding that weekend, so I kind of said no. And then I hung up the phone, I talked to the wife. She says, that's a big opportunity to miss. So I ended up calling my buddy that night, and I said, hey, is there any way I can get out of being at this wedding? And he goes, dude, you got an opportunity like this, you have to take it. So we went. They called down to 15th. We ended up with a 13th place rib call. And then there was a 3-way tie for 15th on chicken, which I don't know how they determined that, but I ended up 17th in that. But, out of 38 pro guys, I think we held our own, at least in ribs and chicken. So then after that, we decided we were done for the year. Well, then they had that BBQ down in Kansas City Halloween weekend, and we just bought a camper. I've got 2 kids now. The one was 3 months old. I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to Kansas City and we're going to cook this. And the wife's like, well, let's go. Like, okay. So me, my teammate, my wife, my 2 kids all packed up in the truck with the camper and drove on down there and cooked a KCBS. We cooked on the backyard side at that one. But didn't get any calls, but met a lot of good people. Met Brad, Kelly Wirtz, Reagan, No Shoes. Great guys. Got to talk to them a little bit. And so, yeah, that's been it so far.
I love that. And I think the theme there is that, you weren't afraid to ask the question on several different fronts, right? So you reached out to Inkbird, just said, hey, what are the opportunities here? If a newer team, or even if you're a veteran team, don't be afraid to ask the question. Worst you're going to know. And I know it sounds cliche and everybody's heard this saying, but you miss 100% of those shots you don't take. And, I think it's a testament to asking that question and really pursuing. I think the second piece to that is you knew you had found your passion. You knew there was an opportunity. You had other teams, other people telling you, hey, this is really good stuff. This is great chicken. This is great mac and cheese, whatever. And you pursued it. You leaned into it, as they say.
Yep.
Which I think is really cool. And I think that's something that, for any barbecue fanatic, I consider myself a barbecue fanatic, barbecue enthusiast, whatever word you want to use. I think it's important that when you realize that, hey, you've got a talent, you've got a skill, you have a creative side, even though it may not be traditional, art, it is creativity, and I think it's important that once you realize that, lean into the dang thing, lean into it, give it all you got. And, you're a true testament to just leaning into that. You've got great support. You've got a great, teammates. You've got obviously a supportive wife, which is huge, huge. You can't, we don't want to gloss over that. I mean, that's huge, right? So, but I love that. I love how you just decided, hey, let's do this thing, and you went out and you did it. So I want to camp out though for a second, because I believe you may be the first competitor we've had on the show that competes actively in the Iowa Barbecue Society, or I'm guessing it's IBS.
Yep.
So tell me about the IBS. Educate us on that. What are the nuances? What are the differences between, the KCBSs, et cetera?
We are basically just like the KCBS, but we're based out of Iowa. We have a pro division and a backyard division. Our pro division is based off of the KCBS Master Series. It's just for the local Iowa guys. The backyard division, we actually hold sanctioned events. Same rules as KCBS, all that. Just promoting these smaller towns that they can't afford the KCBS or don't want to get that big involved. So we're there to sanction it, and mainly to give guys like me a points chase for the year.
That's right, because you've got a young family. I've got a young family. A lot of the newer up and coming teams, they're younger. They have younger families, and so cooking 30, 40, 50 comps a year is just not. It's not practical. It's not going to happen, right? My dream job when I retire is to just travel all over the country and just cook all these crazy competitions. Right.
You and me both.
But I love how, you guys came together and said, hey, let's create a points race for Iowa. They did a very similar thing in Georgia with the GBC, Georgia Barbecue Championship, which follows the KCBS format, but same philosophy, right? They wanted to give folks, hey, you can come out, you can cook 5, 6 comps a year, and you could still win the state of Georgia, or in your case, the state of Iowa, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's really, really important, because you've touched on this several times, when you talk about the Pro Series, the Master Series with KCBS, some folks just get intimidated. Mm-hmm. They get intimidated, they get overwhelmed. And then also you talk about the financial side of things, right? Like you hit the nail on the head when, with these smaller towns, they may not have the resources to bring in a sanctioning body like the KCBS. So hats off to you, man. Hats off to you and the other competitors in Iowa for coming together and saying, hey, let's help these smaller towns put on these contests, because at the end of the day, barbecue is as American as apple pie. And who doesn't want to go to a barbecue competition or a barbecue festival? Like, it's a great offer.
It's a great time. Yep.
All right. So you touched on, some of the different nuances with, the IBS and KCBS, et cetera. Here's a big question I always like too, and that is meat category, right? What's your favorite meat to cook? Not competition. I'm just talking about like Sunday fun day, right? As you talk, if it's a Sunday fun day, football on, whatever, what are you cooking?
Just depends on the week. I really love some good old deer loin, some backstrap. Throw that on the smoker, let it go. As far as the main 4 meats, brisket. I'm a beef guy. I'm a red meat guy. Let's put it that way. I cook backyard, so I'm cooking chicken and ribs, the 2 things I like the least. So that was a big learning curve. The wife loves ribs, especially my comp ribs. I'm not a big fan. If I want to cook them at home, I'll do dry rub. I'll do a dry rib. She gets mad at me. But, it's just all fun. I'm willing to cook anything at any time, something to play around with. I make my own summer sausage, my own, brats, all that. So it's kind of whatever I can get on the grill.
That's right. I love it. If it's not, staring back at you or making noises, we'll put it on the grill, right?
Exactly.
So with Iowa, I'm curious here. So Iowa's obviously a big, agriculture is a huge, probably the biggest industry in Iowa. I know there's obviously a lot of corn and pork industry there. Mm-hmm. Is there a pretty big beef industry in Iowa?
Yeah, there really is.
Okay. One of the things I found that's interesting, in our area of the country, in the Augusta, Georgia area, South Carolina, Georgia, tends to be very heavy with pork, and beef, for example, like we cook brisket, we cook beef short ribs. Very difficult to find good brisket and really difficult to find beef short ribs at all around here. But what I've noticed is like in different pockets of the country, like Texas, obviously, you talk about red meat. I mean, that is like the mecca of beef, right? Texas.
Yep.
So in Iowa, is it more, if you're going to a barbecue restaurant in Iowa, or if you say barbecue, like if you say, hey, come over for a barbecue, what does that mean? What does that mean in Iowa? If you're going to a barbecue, what does that tell you?
You're going to have pork or beef, more than likely.
There you go.
A lot of pork producers. We got a lot of cattle farms also. So, yeah, a little bit of both.
With the going back to the IBS, because I really love this. I mean, I always get excited when I hear folks that are trying to help grow the passion barbecue. With the IBS, what in your mind, right? In your opinion, what's the long-term focus for the IBS? Is it to continue to grow and help these smaller areas bring in annual contests? Is that the idea? Or I'm curious to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, at least that's my goal. They've been around for a while. I don't know the exact date they started. I actually just started joining some board meetings, met some board members here, probably September, October. Started joining in on their board meetings just to kind of get a feel of everything, and applied to be on the board and got elected in December. And then we selected officers in January, and I got selected to be the secretary of the board.
Congrats. You get to do all the work.
Yeah. It's I'm one, if I'm gonna, grandpa always said if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. So I looked at it as I sat back, I learned a little bit. So let's dive into this and let's make this something good. My main focus is backyard. I mean, of course I cook it, but to get new people involved. Because without the backyard programs, you will not have Master Series. This is the way I look at it. So the more locals, the more smaller guys I can talk to get in it, let's do it. I think this year I've gotten 3 or 4 guys that I know personally, met through barbecue, to go ahead and join, and let's do this points chase for the backyard this year. It's a good time. A lot of our comps, we are backyard, so chicken ribs is a must. But a lot of these local comps, they'll do brisket and pork too, and they'll supply the meat. And so what they do, they'll supply the meat, you cook it, you turn in your meat, and then after turn-ins, they'll bring the public in. So the public will come in and taste it, and they usually do a People's Choice Award along with that. And most of these comps do their fundraisers, like our local one does it for our first responders. Smoke on the Water up in Linville, they do it. They pick a community member each year that has had struggles or medical issues to raise money for that person. They pick one person a year. So a lot of these smaller communities do that to raise money for other people. So the more people we can get involved in that to raise more money for people, the better it is for everybody. And again, the only way you're going to get these guys to go into these master comps is to get them in backyard and get them going.
I'm glad you talked about the contest organizer or the festival organizer providing the meat. One of the issues I think that I see with the Master Series, right? Because that's what we cook is the Master Series. I just didn't know any different. I was like, well, we're just going to shoot for the moon and see what happens. But one of the issues I see that prevents a lot of teams from making that jump is just the cost of all this high grade specialty meat. And I know there's no easy solution to this. And there's, always 2 sides to every story, and there's advantages and disadvantages, but I'm curious to hear your take on how do we as competition teams, as barbecue fanatics, how do we level that playing field so that, people feel like they can jump into the Master Series and not have to spend, basically at minimum about $1,000, right? Per contest. I mean, really, that's about what it costs.
Yep. And I actually broke it down when I did that Master Series comp here this last year. entry fee was free thanks to Darren. But then it was a matter of how am I going to afford this? So I got a hold of one of my other local sponsors that's done very well with me. And I said, hey, I got this opportunity. He goes, price it out. I'll write you a check. So breaking it down, everything was reasonable until you get to brisket. And I think it was Hog Hounds. I listened to that one the other day. You talked to them and they said they don't do pro comps because of the price of brisket. I broke that down in that between the brisket, the rubs, the injection, all that. I had $385 in a Wagyu brisket for $400 to win. It's not feasible to anybody. The only way you're going to get around that is to eliminate the Wagyu brisket. How KCBS can do that, I don't know, but that's the biggest hurdle.
Right. And I know, obviously, those folks that make a living off selling, these Wagyu briskets, I get it. They've got a vested interest to make sure that doesn't change. So I understand their perspective there. I think, again, it goes back to, and you hit the nail on the head, and that is, hey, let's get as many folks who want to be involved at some level, because once they get bitten by the bug, so to speak, it tends to just grow from there. And I think one potential solution is to have, the festivals provide the meat so that it is a level playing field. And I'm talking about all the meat. I'm talking about every category. So there's a level playing field across the board. Because again, ultimately, we've got to continue to grow it, because there's no secret, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist or an economist to figure out that participation in competitions across the country are way down. And obviously, some of that's COVID, some of that's extenuating circumstances, some of that, but I think a big portion of that is the cost. And I hear a lot of people say, well, I don't do it to make any money. I'm passionate about it. 100% agree. I love it. I don't
exactly
expect to retire on right. However, I'm also in the financial world, and you sound like a spreadsheet kind of, breaking things down kind of guy. If it's not economically feasible to continue to do something, then you're just not going to do it. So then it comes down to, okay, well, how do we level this playing field? And I think one way to do that is to, have the competitions, have the organizers, provide all the meat. But again, there's two sides to every story, advantages and disadvantages. I think it's just an interesting thing to think about and chat about how we can, look at that long term.
And a lot of the ones around here that they do that, they provide the meat. And I can see both sides of it. I like it because you do have that level playing field across the board. Everybody's cooking the same meat. The one disadvantage is you get your meat Friday night and it's all cryovac ready, so you still have to tear it down, prep it, all that. It adds a lot of work at the end, but at the end of the day, that's where your dedication really shows. To get your meat at 7:00 on a Friday night after you get set up, and then get everything trimmed, injected, however you want to do it. It's a lot of work, but it does level that playing field and shows the determination in the teams that really want it.
That's exactly right. And at the end of the day, it's a competition. So you're going to be working under pressure. I love working under pressure. And if there wasn't any pressure, it wouldn't be a competition. You'd just be cooking in the backyard, So I think you have to enjoy that to some degree. I also think, going back to, getting the people involved and getting, more and more people engaged with you as a whole. I'm not just talking about competition barbecue. I'm just talking about barbecue as a whole. One of the things that I firmly believe in as a barbecue fanatic, as a barbecue steward, whatever you want to call it, is, we need to engage the public. These teams, I'm very outspoken about this. These teams that refuse to engage the public or say, well, I just want to cook the competition. Totally understand that. Totally get it. If everybody thinks that way, though, we won't have any more competitions.
Yep.
Because we're not bringing any value.
Yep. There was a local Iowa page that there's barbecue competitions posted. And when I first started, I was like, I'm going to find some events. So I got on this group, and I think it was just a group of a few guys, and they'd post about it. And I'm like, hey, can I get some info on this next competition? And they're just like, well, why? It's like, well, that turned me away right then and there. Like, if you don't want to give me the info, I want to come cook. You know, I understand there's a lot of work involved, but if you want to cook against the same 6 guys every weekend, go for it. But that's not for me. I want to cook against different people. I want the public to come. I want to talk to the public. Spread the word of barbecue, plain and simple.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's part of our objective is to carry this on and to teach others how to barbecue, whatever path they take. That could be, they want to points and be team of the year. That could be, hey, I want to open up my own restaurant and create my own rubs, whatever path that may be. But I think that's part of our duty and obligation as barbecue fanatics, as barbecue competitors, to make sure, hey, that we are engaging with the public, that we are, taking time to chat with them. And look, I get it. If I'm prepping chicken or ribs and somebody just randomly walks up and asks me questions, I totally understand. It's kind of nerve-wracking, right? I'm out of focus. But I think if we took the time as teams to, block off certain time frames and said, okay, hey, we'll chat with you. We'll give you a tour of our trailer, whatever, between these hours. I just think it would be, I think the public would be more engaged. They would come out more, which leads to more marketing dollars, more sponsorships, which leads to bigger, it builds on each other, right?
Exactly.
But, I know that some folks, again, there's always 2 sides to every story. So that's my take on it. I feel like you and I are in the same boat there. And I love that. At the end of the day, great barbecue is great barbecue. I don't care what you're cooking it on, right? If it's good, awesome. All right. So let's chat about, though, some words of wisdom, because I think with your perspective, it's a very valuable perspective, because you've done a Master Series comp, you've done backyard, you've got sponsors from day one, which is rare. But really, anybody that wants to get into competition barbecue, what would you say to them?
Go out and do it. Find a local comp, go try it out. It's going to be stressful at the beginning. You're not going to know what you're doing, but go out there and have fun. Cook to the best of your abilities. Take some classes, watch some YouTube videos, and just learn. As far as the sponsorship thing goes, you just have to ask. The worst they're going to say is no. And the funny thing about that, they say the worst they can say is no. To me, the worst they can do is not respond. I'm one that I am not going to message 10 charcoal companies at once and say, hey, can you give me a sponsorship? I go one by one. And if I don't hear from them for a week, then I know right then and there, it's not going to happen. The problem that you're going to have if you email 10 different companies at once, what if 2 or 3 of them say yes? Then you have to decide, who do I want to go with? And the other 2 are going to be, they might be upset. So you're going to ruin that relationship off the bat. Really focus on what your needs are and go to them one by one. Prove to them what you can do for them is my main thing. I am very good about tagging sponsors, my local sponsors. Anytime they want something cooked, call me. I'll cook it for you. One of my big sponsors, he owns a shoe store here in town. We did a big cook. They had their anniversary party this year, and I cooked, I think it was 10, 12 pork butts for that, for the public to come in and eat. It's just, the main thing is focusing on what you need. The name Secondhand Smoke comes from everything I had was secondhand until last year. I bought my first drum, little Oklahoma Joe Bronco, loved it. Decided I needed something bigger, so I built one and loved it. And then finally saved up enough money. And then at that master comp, I saw Kelly's K4L. And I went and talked to the team that had it, and he told me about it. And I went home and told the wife. I went back to the trailer and told the wife. She goes, if you want one, go buy it. I bought it, fell in love with it. But up until this year, everything I've had was secondhand. So, and I've cooked on about anything you can think of. The biggest thing is decide what you need before you go asking sponsors for money. Come up with a plan, what you need, what you want from them, what you're going to do for them, and make sure to promote them and keep your word is the main thing.
So you said one very, very important thing I want to highlight there is, and you said, what can you do for them? I think that's really, really important. So many teams are just it's a one-way street, and that's not how this works. It's a two-way street. And so you hit the nail right on the head. You got to provide value. What can you do for them? Why should they sponsor you, right? Not just because you're a barbecue team, because you're going to do A, B, and C. Like that's huge right there. And for anybody listening who's forming a team or just wanting to get into this, that right there is where the money's at. You've got to provide that value in the same way that we as teams have to provide value to these festival organizers, because otherwise, why would they continue to pay to have us there if we're not bringing more revenue to them? It just financially, it makes no sense. Yep. But enough about the finance talk. I want to wind down the show with a wing recipe, since you're cooking wings tonight. So you don't have to if this is a comp, this is your comp recipe, we don't have to share it. But if this is an at-home recipe and you're willing to share, I'm curious to hear how you're going to cook these wings.
Oh, the wings are nothing comp with them. I came home, just Costco value pack wings. Came home, took them out of the package, rinsed them off, put them on a drying rack, threw them in the fridge, let that skin dry out a little bit. Running Malcolm Reed's method, let's call it. Weber kettle in the Vortex. Don't know what I'm gonna hit them with yet. Maybe some white label, maybe some Yardbird. I don't know. I built a spice rack a few weeks ago in the wall. The wife wasn't very happy about it until it was done. I came upstairs, cut a big hole in the wall, and because I had 3 cabinets, 2 drawers, and a tote full of rubs. It's like, well, let's get these out, display them, and then that way we know what we have and we can use them. So I'll figure that out when I get upstairs and see which one looks good. Nothing special. I'll throw them on the smoker and do Malcolm's recipe. Usually takes 45 minutes or so. Get them to that 200 to 208 range. Pull them. Just like ribs, I like a dry wing. The wife will want some sauce on hers, but I'll toss them in some sauce for her. But I'm just all about that rub.
I love it. Love the dry rub. And we'll have, for our listeners, we'll have that Malcolm Reed recipe in the show notes. So you guys can follow that link and cook up some great wings. So again, for our listeners, take some time, connect with Brant Champoux, pitmaster and team captain of Secondhand Smoke out of Iowa, at Secondhand Smoke Iowa on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Brant, we've enjoyed it, man. Great conversation. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.